Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Emily, and I share real-life stories that'll make you laugh, cry, and maybe even scream. Before we dive into today's wild tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of my crazy adventures. Trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. It's a story about a home renovation that turned my life upside down, a contractor who pushed every single one of my buttons, and a moment of weakness that changed everything. Grab your coffee, get comfy, and let's jump into the chaos that was my life last summer. This all started with a simple dream, to transform our fixer-upper into the home of our dreams. But what I didn't know was that this decision would lead to a roller coaster of emotions, a crumbling marriage, and a courtroom drama that's still unfolding. I'm Emily Harper, a 32-year-old graphic designer with a love for cozy aesthetics and a knack for getting myself into trouble. My husband, Jake, is a 35-year-old high school history teacher, charming, patient, and the kind of guy who always sees the best in people. We've been married for 7 years, and while we've had our ups and downs, I thought we were solid. That is, until a certain contractor walked into our lives and turned everything into a hot mess. Let me set the scene. Jake and I bought this adorable but totally outdated house in a quiet suburb of Denver. Think 1970s wood paneling, shag carpet, and a kitchen that screamed grandma's house. We were pumped to renovate it, starting with a full makeover, new floors, fresh paint, and a kitchen that didn't look like it belonged in a retro sitcom. We saved up for months, and by June, we were ready to make it happen. That's when we hired Mike, the contractor who would become the bane of my existence. Mike was in his late 40s, with a scruffy beard, a flannel shirt that looked like it hadn't been washed in a decade, and a toolbox that clinked with every step. He had this slow, drawling way of talking that made you feel like he was about to drop some profound wisdom, but half the time, he was just complaining about the weather or the price of gas. Jake found him through a friend of a friend, and while his rates were suspiciously low, we figured he'd get the job done. Big mistake. Mike wasn't just slow, he was glacial. And his work ethic? Let's just say he treated our house like his personal lounge. The plan was simple: rip out the old linoleum floors and lay down sleek ceramic tiles throughout the house. We're talking 700 square feet of flooring, which Mike swore he could knock out in a week. Spoiler alert, it took 3. From the moment he showed up, I knew we were in trouble. He arrived at 10 a.m. on the first day, 2 hours late, hauling a duffel bag of clothes like he was moving in. "Gotta keep my stuff handy," he mumbled, tossing the bag in our living room. I exchanged a look with Jake, who just shrugged. "He's quirky, but he's cheap," Jake whispered. Famous last words. Mike started by assessing the space, which apparently meant wandering around our house, sipping coffee from a thermos, and muttering about vibes. By noon, he'd laid exactly 0 tiles. Instead, he was lecturing us on why we should have gone with vinyl instead of ceramic. "Ceramic's a pain," he said, scratching his beard. "Gotta be perfect, or it cracks." I bit my tongue, but inside, I was screaming, "Then why did you take the job?" By the end of day 1, Mike had set up a makeshift camp in our dining room, complete with a sleeping bag, a portable speaker blasting classic rock, and a pile of takeout containers. Jake thought it was kind of funny, but I was livid. This guy was treating our home like a frat house. When I asked him to clean up, he just grinned and said, "Relax, darlin'. It's all part of the process." Darlin'? Oh, I was ready to throw his toolbox out the window. Day 2 was when things went from bad to apocalyptic. Jake had to leave for a teacher training session, so I was stuck supervising Mike. I left him alone for 2 hours to run errands, and when I came back, our house looked like a sandstorm had hit. Every surface, counters, furniture, even my favorite throw blanket, was coated in a thick layer of tile dust. The air was so hazy I could barely breathe. Mike was in the kitchen, casually cutting tiles with a saw, no mask, no ventilation, just vibing to Lynyrd Skynyrd. "What the heck happened?" I yelled, coughing. Mike looked up, totally unfazed, and said, "Gotta break some eggs to make an omelet, right?" I was speechless. He'd turned our home into a construction zone without so much as a tarp to contain the mess. I spent the rest of the day scrubbing floors and wiping down surfaces, while Mike laid a grand total of 3 tiles. 3. In 8 hours. I was starting to think he was doing it on purpose. That night, I vented to Jake over dinner. "This guy is a nightmare," I said, stabbing my salad like it was Mike's face. "He's slow, he's messy, and he calls me darlin' like we're in some cheesy western." Jake tried to calm me down, saying we just needed to get through the week. But I could tell even he was losing patience. Mike's presence was like a dark cloud hanging over our house, and it was only getting worse. By day 3, I was at my wit's end. Mike's work pace was infuriatingly slow. He'd spend more time scrolling on his phone than actually laying tiles. I started cooking him lunch just to keep him moving, hoping a full stomach would motivate him. Spoiler, it didn't. He'd eat, complain about the spices, and then take a break to let the food settle. By the end of the day, he'd laid 4 tiles. 4. I could have done better with a YouTube tutorial and a bottle of wine. That night, I exploded. Jake and I were in bed, trying to decompress, but all I could think about was Mike's smug face. "He's driving me up the wall," I said, my voice shaking. "He's disrespectful, he's lazy, and he's ruining our house." Jake tried to play devil's advocate, saying Mike was just a character, but I wasn't having it. We ended up in a heated argument, our first real fight in months. I went to bed fuming, barely able to sleep. The next morning, Mike showed up at 7 a.m., banging on the door like he owned the place. "Morning, sunshine," he called through the door. I dragged myself out of bed, ready to rip him a new one. When I opened the door, he was standing there, holding a greasy paper bag. "Brought donuts," he said, like that made up for everything. I didn't even try to hide my annoyance. "Just get to work, Mike," I snapped, snatching the bag and tossing it on the counter. That day, I let loose. Every ounce of frustration I'd been holding in came pouring out. I called him out for his sloppiness, his laziness, everything. To his credit, he didn't say much, just nodded and went back to work. But I could tell he was ticked off. His jaw was tight, and he barely looked at me. For the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. That evening, Jake had to work late, leaving me alone with Mike. I was still simmering from our morning clash, but I figured I'd just stay out of his way. Around dinner time, Mike wandered into the kitchen, looking for something to eat. I was in no mood to play host, so I pointed at a pile of unpeeled potatoes and said, "Help yourself." It was petty, but it felt good. To my surprise, Mike actually started peeling the potatoes. I couldn't help but smirk as I watched him fumble with the peeler. Feeling bold, I grabbed my phone and posted a snarky update on social media. Day 4 of the world's slowest renovation. Send help. #contractor nightmare. I didn't think much of it, my account was private, and I only had a few close friends following me. But then, disaster struck. Mike's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. His face darkened as he scrolled. Somehow, he'd seen my post. I don't know if a mutual friend shared it or if I'd accidentally made it public, but the damage was done. He looked up at me, his eyes blazing with anger. "You think this is funny?" he growled, holding up his phone. My stomach dropped. I tried to stammer an apology, but he wasn't having it. What happened next is hard to talk about, even now. Mike dropped the potato he was peeling, set down the peeler, and stepped closer. His voice was low, but it dripped with rage. "You've been nothing but rude since I got here," he said. "You think I'm some kind of joke?" I froze, my heart pounding. I'd never seen him like this. His laid-back demeanor was gone, replaced by something intense and unsettling. Before I could respond, he closed the distance between us. I backed up against the kitchen table, my hands gripping the edge. His presence was overwhelming. His flannel shirt smelled of sawdust and sweat, and his rough hands, stained with grout, hovered near me. My breath caught as he reached out, his fingers brushing the hem of my loose blouse. The fabric was thin, and I felt a shiver as his calloused hands slipped underneath, grazing my skin. I should have pushed him away, shouted for him to stop, but my body betrayed me, frozen in a mix of fear and something I couldn't name. His hands moved with a purpose, tugging at my blouse until it bunched up, exposing my midriff. My heart raced, a confusing heat spreading through me despite the panic screaming in my mind. Then, his fingers found the waistband of my jeans. With a swift, practiced motion, he unbuttoned them, pulling them down along with my underwear in one fluid tug. The denim pulled up my ankles, leaving me vulnerable, my legs trembling as I sat back on the edge of the table. I felt exposed, the cool air of the kitchen hitting my skin, and yet there was a warmth building inside me, a sensation I couldn't explain or justify. Mike's eyes locked onto mine, dark and unreadable, as he stepped closer. I felt something firm press against me, a slow, deliberate pressure that made my breath hitch. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. There was a slickness, a betraying warmth that spread through me, making the moment feel surreal. I gripped the table, my knuckles white, as waves of conflicting emotions crashed over me. The roughness of his hands on my hips, the scent of his skin, the intensity of his gaze, it was all too much. My body arched involuntarily, drawn to the heat of the moment, even as my heart screamed that this was wrong. It was over as quickly as it began. Mike pulled back, his breathing heavy, his expression a mix of anger and something else, regret, maybe? I was left trembling, tears welling in my eyes as I slid off the table, pulling my clothes back on with shaking hands. The kitchen was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge, and the weight of what had just happened settled over me like a suffocating blanket. Mike grabbed his jacket, his movements jerky, and walked out without a word. I sank to the floor, my sobs echoing in the empty house, overwhelmed by guilt, shame, and confusion. Jake came home an hour later, and I knew I couldn't keep it from him. I sat him down, my hands trembling, and told him everything. His face went from confusion to devastation in seconds. He didn't yell, he just looked at me like I was a stranger. "How could you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. I didn't have an answer. The next few days were a blur. Mike didn't show up to finish the job, leaving us with a half-tiled floor and a house full of dust. Jake moved out to stay with his brother, saying he needed space to think. I was left alone in our broken home, replaying that night over and over in my head. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. All I could do was cry. A week later, Jake told me he wanted a divorce. I didn't fight him, how could I? I betrayed him in the worst way possible. We hired lawyers, and now we're in the middle of a messy legal battle. The house is still unfinished, a constant reminder of my mistakes. I've started seeing a therapist to work through the guilt and shame, but it's a long road. If there's one thing I've learned from this mess, it's that actions have consequences, big ones. I let my frustration and anger take over, and it cost me everything. But I'm trying to move forward. I've joined a support group for women going through divorce, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've even started working on the house again, one small project at a time. It's therapeutic, in a way, laying each tile feels like a step toward healing. To anyone watching this, I hope my story is a reminder to think before you act. Don't let a moment of weakness define you. And if you're dealing with a nightmare contractor, maybe just hire someone else. Trust me, it's not worth the drama. Thanks for listening, you guys. This was a tough one to share, but I hope it resonated with some of you. If you've got a crazy renovation story or just want to chat, drop a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life drama. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, and take care.